Many parents sense that something is missing in modern education today. The idea of just school as information and job preparation alone is not nearly as important as forming humans to flourish with not only our heads, but our hearts and our hands moving out with purpose into the world. Over 100 years ago, educator Charlotte Mason championed the idea that education is about forming habits, shaping affections, and feeding the mind with rich ideas. Her vision may be more needed now than ever before in our schools and our homes. Join us for this episode of Basecamp Live as we discover how to put her wise understanding into practice in our classrooms and in our homes on this episode of Basecamp Live.
Mountains. We all face them as we seek to influence the next generation. Get equipped to conquer the challenges, summit the peak, and shape exceptionally thoughtful, compassionate, and flourishing human beings. We call it Ancient Future Education for raising the next generation. Welcome to Basecamp Live. Now your host, Davies Owens.
Welcome to another episode of Basecamp Live. Davies Owens here with you for another week of exploring all things about raising the next generation to what can feel like climbing to the top of Mount Everest, hence the Basecamp Live theme. I cannot believe that in 2026, we're going to be celebrating the 10th anniversary of Basecamp Live. All that's coming in the end of the year. Around November, you'll be hearing more. We'll do a little celebration of a whole decade of podcasting. And you know, as you've heard me over the years, that my heart has always been in connecting schools and parents together on this journey of raising the next generation. I've been at this for a couple decades now. I'm getting old in the world of classical Christian education, but I have such a heart for that partnership. And I know that it's harder and harder today to find ways to effectively connect and communicate with each other, which is why 3 years ago, I did kind of a big, it wasn't a midlife crisis, it was a big vision moment to literally step down from my role as the executive director of the SCL and launch a technology company, which is now doing extremely well. We call it Zipcast. If you're around Basecamp Live, you hear all about it. And I just want to take a second and share with you my heart in this. It's not me trying to sell something or another sponsor to promote something here, but really at the heart of all of this is the fact that biblically we know that we will only be effective in raising the next generation if we are locking our arms together, rowing together, whatever analogy you want to use, between what's happening in our schools and in our homes, where the two biggest influences happen in the course of 24 hours. So when we launched Zipcast 3 years ago, the idea was just simply, could we pull together a more effective resource, a tool, so that schools could in fact communicate instead of just an email or newsletter, being able to take the actual voices of school leaders to share updates and personal stories as well as news, blended with content that we've helped put together over, we're getting close to 1,000 segments on little 2-minute segments on parenting and classical education and best practices, all of that in about a 10-minute runtime. So parents on a Monday morning get a text, they click play. Many of you know this because you do it at your school, and we deliver a platform that allows that to happen seamlessly. In fact, it's pretty easy behind the scenes for school leaders to put these episodes together. We have over 100 schools, about 10,000 people per week listening. And I just want to give a call out to, first of all, if you're a Zipcast school, thank you for that. We've got some really exciting new features coming this fall. If you're not a part of the Zipcast world, I want to encourage you, if you're a parent, please encourage your school administration to know what we're up to. And if you're a school leader, please consider signing up for a next steps call and having the opportunity to learn more about Zipcast. It's just a short one-on-one Zoom call we'll set up with you, with our team, and just give you an opportunity to understand and help us understand what you're up to with your communication, because it works across small and large schools of all sorts. So again, I'm sharing that mainly just as a heart's desire to say we've got to be better aligned if we're going to have a consistent voice in the lives of our children. And this is just a platform, a delivery system that I know, in fact, to be very effective. You can learn more at zipcast.media. Having said all of that, I want to also give a quick shout out to a couple of schools out there that are part of the Basecamp Live and Zipcast family, in particular the Providence Classical School in Spring, Texas. Richard Halloran, head of school there. Thank you, Richard, for being a part of this community and being a part of the work that's going on around the world right now in raising up the next generation with classical Christian education. And also a big shout out to the folks at the St. Timothy School in Dallas, Texas. Head of school there, the Right Reverend Dr. John Bonzire. We are so thankful that you guys are part of this community. I'm excited to jump into this conversation with Dr. Patrick Egan. He is an amazing voice in the classical Christian school movement and is an expert, I give him that title, when it comes to this amazing historic figure, Charlotte Mason. Dr. Patrick Egan is the academic dean at the Clapham School. He previously served as an administrator at the Providence Classical Christian Academy in St. Louis, Missouri. He has degrees in music history and literature, as well as a degree from Trinity Evangelical Divinity School and a PhD from St. Andrews in Scotland. Before we get into this conversation, just a quick thank you as well to our partners for this episode, the Herzog Foundation, Wilson Hill Academy, Dr. Robert Littlejohn and Chuck Evans, and their amazing book, Wisdom and Eloquence for Parents, as well as the folks at the Wise Phone. All of those great partners. You can learn more on our partner page. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Patrick Egan. Patrick, welcome to Basecamp Live.
It's so good to be here.
Well, it's great to kind of reciprocate. I had the privilege of being on your podcast. In fact, it just went live a few weeks ago. Thank you for that opportunity to have a conversation with you.
I love this idea of a podcast exchange, and we can share ideas in both of our formats.
Well, it's great because we're all on the same team. We're all trying to advance the work of Christian education, classical education, and Charlotte Mason, who, if you've listened, anybody's listened for any time to Basecamp Live, her name comes up quite often. Before we get into it, just a little bit of your story for folks that are curious. Kind of what's your background? How did you get into education? Tell a little bit of the Patrick story.
I think my journey was one of almost constantly avoiding education as much as I could. So I was a music ed major undergrad, and I tried desperately to get out of the education part of it. So my journey took me to biblical studies. I got my PhD in biblical studies and was very much in that higher education world where it's lecturing, it is doing biblical languages and all of that. And as I completed my PhD, the job market completely shifted. So most PhDs at that point did not get jobs in academia. And so it really took reconfiguring one's understanding of even what that kind of degree is and how do you transform yourself to move into the markets that were there. And for me, that meant moving into a classical school. So I moved back to Wheaton. There was a classical school there, Clapham School, and I could simultaneously work in the library at Wheaton College and then cross the street and work in the classroom. And it was a hugely transformative experience for me to learn about classical ed while also learning about Charlotte Mason. So we had training where we learned about narration, we learned about habit training, and it revolutionized my understanding of what education is. So I had been doing education. I had been in classrooms teaching seminary students, teaching college students, largely modeled after teachers I had had. But now I was understanding the deeply formative aspect of encountering great texts, of learning methods that would engage students with that, to really have that transformative effect of what does the Lord do in the secret part of the heart of children when they have that encounter with great texts, beautiful paintings, with the natural world. And so going from a world of specialization where you're really diving into one specific aspect of the biblical text to now teaching across all of these domains of knowledge and then seeing how they all relate to one another and then relate to the heart of the child.
Yeah.
It transformed my teaching. It also kind of transformed my parenting as well.
That's fascinating. So just so everybody's kind of on the same page here, when we talk about Charlotte Mason, who was this individual?
Charlotte Mason was an educational thinker in the Victorian and then on into the Edwardian era in England. And when you think about this young lady, always single, her love was raising up educators that would teach children in a way that she felt was biblically consistent, that took some of the best of the educational principles on hand, some of which come from that deep classical or liberal arts tradition, which we can talk about more, framed in British culture, right? You can think of Cambridge, Oxford, and the schools that fed into that. That is for the educated elite, right? Well, how does one take that then to mining towns? So there was this concern she had for the liberalization of that kind of education, while also listening into some of the best conversations philosophically across Europe. And so this whole idea of valuing the child, when you think about the relative understanding of the value of a child in that Victorian era, you could think of these Dickens novels where children are kind of an afterthought. And now you have this lady saying, no, children are fundamentally valuable. And because they're valuable, they need this education, and our society needs them to be well educated and thoughtfully educated. And so she put out 6 books that began in the home. So her first thought was, let's educate mothers, let's educate governesses. And then it just kept expanding as her thoughts started to reach some of the leaders of society. They wanted this in classrooms. They wanted these in what we would consider public schools, so that there was a real sense of transforming education. I liken this to the ways in which Wilberforce would have thought about we need to transform education. We need to raise people up so that they can do gospel work, so that they can reform prisons and do missionary work and all of that. That was early Victorian era. Late Victorian era, I feel like she was on that same page.
Right. She was really ahead of her time in the sense that her world was not all that unlike our world today, where education had sort of become a little more than just training for the factory worker utilitarian view of it, dehumanization of the child, as you're talking about. So she was in many ways ahead of her time. I think today, just again, for those who are maybe new to her name, or maybe they know of her name, I find a lot of times when I'm speaking at schools around the country and I bring up Charlotte Mason, and I will often say, somewhat provocatively, although we can get into this, which is, classical education does a pretty good job of defining what books we should go and read, but we don't really have it quite figured out all the time in terms of how do we actually execute education in the classroom or even in our home. And we tend to fall back to the public school way we were taught, John Dewey and others. But Mason's also, I think, got maybe a branding problem, in my opinion. I mean, it seems like you ask the average classical educator or even parent who's aware, she tends to get kind of I guess, narrowly framed up as this sort of butterfly chasing, kind of almost Montessori approach of education that's really out of step with classical. So do you see that sort of, I guess, misbranding of who she is in terms of the way that she's often perceived?
Yeah, I definitely think she's misbranded. And some of that is going to be the fault of early Masonites, right? If that's the right word for it.
Yeah.
Because she had written so extensively about her philosophy, the pedagogical methods, as soon as she died in 1923, the leaders of that movement kind of locked it down. There was no further advancement of her thought, which is counterintuitive because she was such an advanced thinker. If there were new breakthroughs in science, she was incorporating that into her thinking. So you get some really early insights into neurology and childhood development that we would have to wait almost 100 years for us to really understand that. So just like with classical ed, this essay by Dorothy Sayers got written,
40s, yeah,
in the 40s, and was never really thought about again until the 80s?
Yep.
Similarly, Charlotte Mason was kind of grabbed by some homeschoolers who read that early volume, Home Education, and it very much became applied to young learners and in that homeschool context. But there's a lot of sophistication that one sees in her later works. Yeah. And I think as people have read those, they've said there's a lot here that could really be compatible with classical education.
Yeah, it to me is the missing ingredient. As I was just saying, it seems like a lot of our classrooms do a pretty good job of finding the right content, but we end up delivering it very much lecture style or teach to the test, even though we claim we don't really want to do that. I remember, I think it was in 2004. I don't know how to remember. I remember this date because it was so kind of, I guess, formative to me. I was at an ACCS conference and there was a workshop that was being put on by Nancy Donaldson, who's part of the Wilson Hill Academy founder. She's a founder at Wilson Hill Academy. And the provocative title was, Do Dorothy and Charlotte Get Along? And it was really kind of an early highlighting of this point that this woman, Charlotte Mason, actually has a lot to say that we need to pay attention to. Don't dismiss her as being out of step with classical education. So again, it's to your point, maybe she got a little sidelined in history or maybe overly focused on by a certain subset. But your journey has been one of let's bring her back into the limelight because her voice is very needed right now.
Yes.
So when we think about sort of the challenges that we see, the problems in a typical, if we can say typical, kind of modern, even classical school classroom that Charlotte Mason would look in and say, hold on a minute, you're missing something. What's missing today?
What I think is missing, and I've often thought about the three transcendentals, truth, goodness, beauty, that one can walk up to a great work of art, right? And walk away and say, been there, done that, and never had the transformative effect of it, right? Mm-hmm. This is where I think those three transcendentals have that as an attendant to them, the moral formation of the person, so that there's wisdom and eloquence and that we become people who have experienced these things. So it's not about going and reading a great book, taking it off my list, or going to a museum and seeing a great work of art and then been there, done that. You soak in it. It becomes part of who you are. I am now changed because I've read this, I've looked at this. And it's that change, it's that transformative effect we always need to be aware of. And to just think, if I have encounters with the good, true, and beautiful that will change me, can be misguided. Of course they can change us. But if there are tools that we can use that enable children, enable learners to have that really deep, rich experience with these materials, I think that's what we're searching for in classical education, and that I think Charlotte Mason provides.
And I want to take a break, and when we come back, I want you to respond to, I'll go ahead and set up an idea. And I say these things somewhat provocatively, but I genuinely believe them to be true. I mean, really, the enemy at the gates that we are confronting in our modern moment and the culture around us are very aggressive, very calculated, whether it's technology and big tech algorithms. Everything out there that's coming at us and our children is really in the arena of things that we are being formed to love or have an affection towards. And there is a knowledge element, but we're not brains on sticks. So what I think Charlotte Mason is enabling us to do, if we do it well, is allow those ideas like you're describing of beauty to actually move the soul to form the deepest part of us, which my premise is that if we can do that, we've actually done something that could in fact stand against those barbarians at the gates. Otherwise, we're just filling our heads with lots of facts and our loves are in some other place. Is that a fair critique?
Absolutely. And I think that takes us to Augustine and the ordering of affections.
So let's come back. I want to let's jump into that because this is a great tie-in to another great mind in the field of life and education and faith. We'll be right back and continue the conversation. During this short break, I have a special invitation to all school leaders, administrators, and teachers. I want you to imagine for a moment stepping away from your everyday routine at school and diving deep into the rich foundations of Christian education, surrounded by world-class scholars, seasoned classroom teachers, and administrative experts with years of experience running schools with a lot of wisdom to share. That's exactly what the Herzog Foundation's Institute is offering. I've had the joy of serving as a training coach for the last few years, leading their 2.5-day training on spiritual formation and another one on parent engagement. They offer close to 50 unique training events ranging from board governance to marketing to classroom best practices. They even offer a training on how to teach the great books. And the best part of all, well, thanks to the generosity of the Herzog Foundation, these training events, including lodging, are completely free for Christian educators. Institutes are located around the country in beautiful locations, including at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., and the Reagan Library in Santa Barbara. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Check out the details at theherzogfoundation.com. If you're seeking an education that helps your child thrive academically and spiritually, Wilson Hill Academy has spent years developing a model that I want you to know about. In their free guide, you'll see how their thoughtfully sequenced curriculum prepares students for college and how a biblical worldview helps them understand the world around them with clarity, and how their discussion-based classes teach them to think critically, not just what to think. You'll also discover how their teachers equip students to live purposefully for Christ. With accredited live online classes, your child can learn from master teachers anywhere with an internet connection, all within a community that has transformed families like yours. Download their free guide today at wilsonhillacademy.com/guide or in the link in our show notes. Patrick, right before the break, you were talking about Augustine and the Ordo Amoris, the ordering of loves. And this is, again, the battle that we fight every day is, what are our children going to love? What do we love? What do we care about? It's the James K. Smith, you are what you love idea, sort of modern language, but it's not a new idea. Talk about a bit about Augustine's contribution there and how it ties into Charlotte Mason.
The ordering of loves that he talks about, Ordo Amoris, it views us as human beings as more than just intellect or physicality, our material parts of ourselves. It says there are these deep motivations, these things that we have affection for or love for, and that there are orders of things to love. I might really love a steak, but that love of a steak is going to be different than something that ought to be loved even more. For instance, God. So, and all of these point upward, right? So a lower love is priming me to love that which is higher. And we can often think about acquired tastes, that one needs to learn how to love some things that are lovely because they take time, they're nuanced. So we don't have our children, for instance, read Milton in first grade. It takes training, it takes grammatical learning. We save that for later in their educational experience because you have to rise up through the ranks. Yes, intellectually, but also to have your heart open to understand what Milton is saying because your heart was opened to other, what we might think of as lesser pieces of literature, but that were good in their own right in that journey of loving different things. And here's where I think this is really relevant to our understanding of, well, who are these children that are learning? Well, they're fundamentally capable of learning. And I think that's the grand vision that Charlotte Mason puts forward. She says that children are born persons. So we're not waiting for them to become persons when they get old enough or something like that. They're literally born in their personhood, which means they're worthy of dignity and respect. Mm-hmm. Charlotte Mason brings in biblical theology here. We are born in the image of God, so that all of these affections that we have, or we could even say our intellects and all of that, we are made so that we can receive what God is sending us, right? So whether it's this general revelation where we get inspired, we get that in breath when we see a beautiful landscape or a beautiful thunderstorm, we feel things there, but we also are able to receive his divine message. He's made us fit so that when he expresses his salvation plan, there's nothing in us that that wouldn't be capable of that. Obviously, there's the need for the Holy Spirit to do their inner work, but it's not counter to the way he has made us.
So how's that different than the modern view of it? I mean, a typical modern school view is the child is basically still unformed. I mean, what's the view in comparison?
Yeah, just think about the utilitarian view of the child. We're constantly waiting for them to be a productive member of society. They haven't learned to code yet. We're waiting for them to learn to code so that they can work a job. And by the way, that job will probably be gone in 10 years because of AI. So it
Maybe
always
2 years. Yes, it's right, right.
But so it's always framed against the potential job.
Right. As opposed to they are already made in the image of God, fully capable. And that gets into, when I think of Charlotte Mason, the word habit comes up, throughout her writing. And so talk about what is the correlation between the shaping of the affections and our loves as it ties into the habits. Why is that such a big part of her message?
Yeah, this is fascinating. And one of those misunderstandings of conventional education, right, where we talk about classroom management, which I think is fundamentally manipulative. Who's benefiting from that classroom management? It's usually the teacher. We're trying to keep the kids compliant, not noisy, working on something, versus habit training. And this actually goes way back to Greek philosophy. So the whole idea is, what is the grand vision of this child? Yes, they're made in the image of God. They're just not yet mature. And so by having this understanding of them growing into their more mature self, it's a vision of them that they want for themselves. I want to be more mature. I want to be heroic. Well, how do we aim you towards that end? Well, we install habits. So in Greek philosophy, you have this idea of the eudaimonic life, the good life, the thing that really compels us or draws us forward into life. It's a sense we have of what the good life is. Well, how do you acquire that? The Greeks would say you need arete, or virtues or excellence. When you install those things like courage or temperance, it may feel like it binds you, but it actually frees you to be able to live that eudaimonic life. Well, how does one acquire virtues? Through daily habit. You do those things that are consistent with courage and temperance and order and faith and hope and love. As you acquire those things in little routines, little habits every day, you're pointing towards that grand vision of life. You're being pulled forward by something magnificent. So habit training isn't saying be compliant so we can just get our work done. It's saying we believe you desire in your heart to be a more mature version of yourself. And let's work towards keeping your cubby orderly, because I think you're going to be deeply satisfied by the order you're able to create in this small domain. And then you'll be able to create order in the world, right?
Right. Well, it's again, there's so much more I want us to talk about, and time being limited, I want to take a break. I want to come back and really, therefore, given that philosophy and that approach, what does that really look like when it comes to our classrooms and our homes? And for instance, just set this up. I mean, the idea of habit training, I believe she said like 9 out of 10 things in life are habits. To your point about keeping the cubby clean, it's not just because we're all type A, it's because what does that do when you form a habit of orderliness or of attending well? I mean, such a rare gift in our world today of scattered attention spans, to have a child that can actually attend to the text or attend to the atmosphere around them. And so all these things set the child up for success in the long run and create a much more favorable educational environment. So I want to hear more specifics of these ideas, because I think there's just such gold in here that we need to mine to be successful as classical schools and classical homes. So we'll be right back after the break.
Hi there, classical Christian parents, students, and teachers. This is Robert Littlejohn, co-author with Charles Evans of Wisdom and Eloquence, a Christian paradigm for classical learning, published by Crossway Books. We want you to know about our new book with well-known family counselor Keith McCurdy, published by Classical Academic Press. The book is titled Wisdom and Eloquence for Parents: How Classical Christian Education Can Transform Your Children, Your Family, and the World. We have written this shorter, parent-focused book specifically as an admissions and parent education resource for schools and families. We are excited to be proud sponsors of Zipcast and Basecamp Live, and we hope you are enjoying these two great resources for classical learning as much as we are. And we would invite you to visit our website, wisdomandeloquence.org, to explore the various services offered by the authors of Wisdom and Eloquence for Parents, and to let us know how we can best serve you. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
Every school year tells a story. The big chapters, like the first day of class or graduation, are easy to see. But the real heart of the story is often written in the quieter pages. A science experiment that sparks wonder, a class pausing to memorize a psalm, a teacher encouraging perseverance when the work gets hard. Those are the moments parents long to hear. That's why we created Zipcast. Each week, families receive a short 10 to 12 minute episode, local updates from their school leaders, paired with syndicated wisdom from trusted national experts in both Christian parenting and education. Parents can listen in the rhythm of daily life, on the drive to practice, while making dinner, or during a quiet walk. Nearly 100 schools are already using Zipcast this year to strengthen trust and community, and fall or winter isn't too late to sign up. It's often the best time to begin. Save your spot at zipcast.media. Zipcast, encouraging you on the go with what you need to know.
Patrick, we were just saying during the break that we could go for hours on this topic. There's a lot here, and it is important to understand the philosophy that sort of sits behind all of this. But at the end of the day, we're talking to educators, we're talking to parents, kind of what does this really have to do with the way I conduct my classroom? Talk about that to begin with. So just for a moment, for educators, parents you can listen to, but just what would you say if you walked into a classroom would be things you would hope to see if you were filtering it through a Charlotte Mason optimized environment?
The word that comes to mind is ownership, so that the child is really owning for themselves certain things in that classroom, owning for themselves a responsibility to learn. And the word responsibility might not be precisely right, because they might not even think about it as a responsibility. There's just an earnestness to learn because it's fascinating, because it's a place of joy. And I'm coming expectant every day to learn something and to just have a moment of wow today. Ownership of the space, it's really working. The dust pans and the arrangement of the furniture and just the ways in which the classroom operate, you see the agency of the student, the energy of the student is such that they're not feeling like somebody is curating this space for me, but that I'm actually a contributor to this. If this space looks great, it's because I've contributed to it. There was one school I was at where at the last 10 minutes of the day, the head of school said, now just sit here and watch what happens. And students emerged from their classrooms and they just started grabbing spray bottles and brooms and cloths to wipe things down. And the whole, not janitorial staff, but the students, they started cleaning the space. And she said, you see that girl over there? She yells at other students when they track in that salty snow because she cleaned that floor. And so it wasn't just a workshop. It wasn't utilitarian. It was them owning that space, delighting in the fact that this was their space. It was kind of like when kids build their own fort. It's theirs, and you need permission to come in. I get when you walk into these spaces where this whole idea of habit training, atmosphere, narration is working, you see that. You see the look on a student's face as they're in the learning environment because they're expecting to participate in something.
So when you use the word joyful, and I think that's a really important, there's a lot behind that. And I think that idea of joyful discovery begins as I've studied Charlotte Mason with, first of all, the books you're putting in front of them she calls them living texts. They're not twaddle or pre-digested textbooks. So there's this engagement that's happening where they're discovering these great transformative ideas. I mean, she talks about books actually possessing. The ideas are so rich. It's kind of a crazy term to even think about that. But it gets to that idea, to the idea you're talking about, which is it should be joyful. There should be excitement. There should be anticipation. And so it is cleaning it up and making sure there's a sense of agency and ownership in the space. But I know that the real drive and distinctive is that sense of the child coming alive to discovering these great ideas and then owning them, and then that forms their habit. So it's a really powerful connection. Whereas I think a lot of times, to your point, you just got somebody lecturing, through this, all the data points of the great book, and it's good information, and it might even be an interesting philosophy conversation, but it didn't strike their heart. So I think that's what you're getting at. There's something deeper. Yeah.
One of the key questions that I often pose in a classroom setting, but this could also be in the home, is where is the locus of the energy? So in lecturing, PowerPoint, these kinds of mono-directional teaching, the energy is usually up at the lectern, right? And there's a lack of energy amongst the students, maybe some furious note-taking, but it's not an energetic interaction with living ideas and grappling with text and discussion. So I will work with teachers to move that energy to the students, to the learner. And that often happens by get them reading the text, have them narrate the text, tell it back, have them come with questions that are going to be what's going on with the discussion-based learning, right? And that may then relegate me to a facilitator, but I still have a plan. We know how we're engaging these texts. Sometimes there's a piece of knowledge I need to share, but I'm always trying to, I liken it to being a goalkeeper. I want to kick the ball back into place so that the energy is remaining there. I think it's the same in the home, where if the energy for responsibility taking, cleaning, or setting the agenda remains with me, then the child really isn't learning how to be capable in life. So what could I do to pose questions? What do we need to do today? How can I keep the energy so that the home environment and the way they map out their schedule or understand their day, they're owning that instead of waiting for me to dictate what comes next. So I think that flipping the energy question,
the road to graduation begins early and takes many paths. And without a skilled guide, it can feel overwhelming.
They should be the ones
the career coaches at Life Architects empower students to discover who God created them to be through our unique vocational discipleship model. You can bring this graduation game changer to your school through one-on-one student coaching, on-campus workshops, or even faculty training. Visit lifearchitectscoaching.com today.
We're emotional beings. We're heart-driven as well as head.
During this short break, I have a special invitation to all school leaders, administrators, and teachers. I want you to imagine for a moment stepping away from your everyday routine at school and diving deep into the rich foundations of Christian education, surrounded by world-class scholars, seasoned classroom teachers, and administrative experts with years of experience running schools with a lot of wisdom to share. That's exactly what the Herzog Foundation's Institute is offering. I've had the joy of serving as a training coach for the last few years, leading their 2.5-day training on spiritual formation and another one on parent engagement. They offer close to 50 unique training events ranging from board governance to marketing to classroom best practices. They even offer training on how to teach the great books. And the best part of all, thanks to the generosity of the Herzog Foundation, these training events, including lodging, are completely free for Christian educators. Institutes are located around the country in beautiful locations, inclling
is to be in conversation with the teachers.
DC,
what are they
Reagan
doing
Library
in school
Santa
that
Barbara?
relates
Don't
to home?
miss this
And
incredible opportunity. Check out the details at the Herzog Foundation.com.
The age at which they should just be doing dishes, laundry, sweeping the front walk, and not just for chores to put a sticker on a chart and maybe earn some spending cash, but really to be a contributing member of the home. Like, this is what it means to be part of our family, is we're all positively doing these things because it just feels so much better when our home is in this way. Everybody's loving each other through the preparation of a fine meal, of that, dinner able environment. It's a grand vision of what our family is. And these are the specific ways that we energetically contribute to this instead of waiting around for mom to do it all, right? That framework is such a positive way of thinking about things like chores.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's back to individual agency, and it's giving you a sense of what I think more and more young families, and there's a lot of families today, I think, are coming to that realization that we need to rediscover kind of the analog life. Like, what would it look like to live more in an embodied experience? So we're washing dishes together. We've created community. There's something joyful. And again, it's shaping those habits and affections towards things that are truly more beautiful and sustainable than just the kind of flakiness of the technology or whatever may be around us. So this is a really important conversation, Patrick. Again, for time, we can't keep going with much more here, but for folks who are listening thinking, okay, I've never really heard of Charlotte Mason, or maybe I had a misunderstanding of her, what are resources that you would point people to dig deeper into these ideas?
There's a great book by Jason Barney, one of my colleagues at Educational Renaissance. It's put out by Circe, and it's a classical guide to narration. Narration is one of those key practices in Charlotte Mason pedagogy. On our website, educationalrenaissance.com, there are a number of topics, particularly if you look at Charlotte Mason, we kind of break it down to narration and habit training, but there's so much more because it's a philosophy that looks at the personhood of the child and the interrelatedness of knowledge. We tend to coach in those practices that kind of filter from the philosophy. And so there are lots of resources there, whether it's blog posts, webinars, and we also do training at schools on these things.
Well, it's so important. I promote Jason's book all the time on narration, and that's a whole nother topic. We've done podcasts on it before. It'd be great to have you back and really unpack narration, because it is sort of I think kind of the holy grail to creating engaging, thoughtful conversations. And it's such an antidote, again, to the modern moment of distraction. And so often students will read a great book and then they put the book down and they don't even remember what they read because attention spans are what they are. So this really helps address that. So a lot of great resources there. Love what you guys are doing in Educational Renaissance, and look forward to continuing our conversation. But thank you so much for your insights today.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Basecamp Live. Be sure to check out our website, basecamplive.com, for more than 8 years of timeless episodes that you'll find helpful and encouraging, as well as the helpful resources offered on our partners page. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of our partners like the Herzog Foundation. See you back next week.